Last Sunday, we officially kicked off kind of our big push up to Mission Sunday. July 14th is our 17th annual Mission Sunday, where we take up a one-day contribution to help bolster our missions giving to places around the world. This year, our goal is $738,500. And so over the next few weeks, you're going to be hearing stories about how God is working in the world, specifically how he works in ways that are unexpected. So on your way out the door today, if you didn't have a chance to do this last week, make sure and grab your Mission Sunday poster, put it up on your wall or your fridge or wherever you like to hang things. Grab your Mission Sunday glasses and your Mission Sunday regional card. And so you can get all those things on the stage or at the exits in the back. You can get them out at our Mission Sunday display in the lobby. These cards are going to tell you where specifically in a particular region of the world we are going to be given to on July 14th. And this week's region moves us east in the world. We are looking at Asia and the Pacific today. And so you'll see that one of the works that we are going to support on July 14th is the work of Manny Pagadapalli, who works in India. Manny is always sending us stories that are just amazing accounts of what God is doing in a part of the world that is increasingly hostile, sometimes violently so, towards Christians. And so one part of the story that you're going to read about on this card today is that part of the story, the challenging part, the part that makes us threaten to lose hope. But then when you put your glasses on, you're going to read a second part of the story. Manny sends an incredible story of how God is working through people, through his people in that part of the world. I'm not going to spoil it for you today because I want you to grab a regional story card and grab your glasses and read the rest of it. It's an amazing story of how God is at work and how we get to partner with amazing things going on in this world. We're actually going to focus a little bit more on this story in a few weeks on Mission Sunday, but make sure and grab that and read a little bit more about it today. We're also working in the South Pacific Bible College in New Zealand, helping to support the work they do in educating and training young preachers and young ministers. And then also with the Justin and Jennifer Cherry family. We are now the primary sponsoring congregation for this great family who's doing work in New Zealand with the Discover Church, reaching out to a community that needs to know Jesus and having a lot of success doing that. So we're excited to partner with Jennifer and with Justin. And so grab those things on your way out today. Don't forget to go to mrcc.org/Mission Sunday, where you'll read even more stories from Justin and Jennifer, other places in India, other places around the world, and learn about more about how God is working in unlikely and unexpected ways in the world. And then visit our Mission Sunday display out there to grab all your cards. We've got more cards from last week, too. Those were popular. We ran out of the Oklahoma ones, but I ordered some more of those. You can get those out in the lobby as well. July 14th, keep that on your prayer list as we look forward to our 17th annual Mission Sunday.
Well, happy Father's Day. If you have not got your Father's Day card, you have a few more minutes to do that before lunch. If you need to leave in the middle of my sermon, I will understand. So I know that not everybody's a dad, but one debate that often comes up in my family around this time of year is, what do you do for lunch on Father's Day? You've got one school of thought which says we go out to eat for barbecue, and the other school of thought is we go home for just a good home cooking meal. So as I often do, I enjoy polling the audience here to see where you fall on the side of this very important debate. How many of you, and you can vote even if you're not a dad, just in general, out to eat barbecue or home cooking? Here we go. How many of you say out to eat barbecue? And how many of you say home cooking? Okay, that's pretty close actually. Well, regardless of where you stand on that issue, glad you're here this morning. If you have not been here before, my name is Phil, and I am the preacher here, and we've been in the middle of a series about relationships, and specifically relationships at home. And so we'll hop into that lesson in just a minute. I do want to tell you, though, this week is our VBS, and we're doing VBS a little different this summer, so we really want VBS to last the whole summer. So instead of doing it 3 days in a row, we are having 3 special family nights at different times throughout the summer. The first one is this coming Tuesday from 6:30 to 8:30. It's called Kids Celebration Live. It's very family-oriented. There's lots of interactive games, bounce houses, ice cream. I will be there with my children. You can register for this at mrcc.org/VBS. It's helpful if you can register so we can know how many people to expect. However, if you can't, anybody's welcome. And this particular event on Tuesday, very guest-friendly. So we'd love you to bring your friends, love you to bring your neighbors this coming Tuesday. There is a booth set up in the lobby, and you are welcome to buy a shirt or ask any questions that you might have. So VBS this coming Tuesday. So this is week 4 of this series. It's called Home Improvement. It's really about how do you focus on those relationships at home, because your home life really affects the rest of your life. If home life's not good, if it's dysfunctional, if it's not going well, the rest of your life won't be going well either. And so we've really focused on what do you do to improve those relationships. So 3 weeks ago, on the very first week of the series, it's pretty simple. The first message was about the idea of follow through. Do not declare what you cannot deliver. And so if you will just commit to saying what you mean and meaning what you say, I promise you, your relationships at home, they will get stronger. The second week we talked about conflict. Everybody has it. It's inevitable. You'll never have a home life without some sort of tension. And one way to deal with that tension is to surround it with really good memories. So conflict surrenders when it is surrounded. And so if you build all these other positive, good memories in your life, doesn't mean the conflict's going to go away. It just means the conflict, you'll see it differently because you've stored up, just like Joseph did in the Old Testament. You've stored up all these good things to prepare for the bad that will inevitably come. And then last week, we overtly talked about the stages of parenting. And really the big idea of last week was every stage requires a shift. And so the way that you parent a 2 or 3-year-old is not the way that you parent a 13-year-old. It's not the way that you parent an 18-year-old. And we have to grow as parents as our children grow. Which brings us to today. And so let me begin with some sports talk here. It's Father's Day. We'll talk about sports in just a minute. So I was really hoping that the Warriors-Raptors NBA Final Series would go to Game 7, because Game 7 would have been tonight. And let me ask you this question. If you are a coach of an NBA team and it is Game 7, it's kind of a dumb question, but would you rather play that game in your home stadium or away? Well, of course, you'd rather play the game in your home stadium. It's what in sports we call home court advantage. And in the NBA, in the regular season, 60% of the time, the home court team wins. And in the playoffs, that number's even more drastic. 64% of the time in the NBA, the home court team wins. Now, I was very disappointed because in the NBA Finals, it did not go that way at all. It was actually 5 out of the 6 games were won by the away team, which does not help my case at all of the point I'm trying to make. Overall, though, the home court team wins more often. In fact, there's been a lot of research in trying to figure out, why does this happen? It's the same 2 teams. Why does the home team win more often when they are at home? So one factor is the crowd. Players tend to play a little better when they have the crowd cheering for them. Another factor would be altitude. So you go play the Denver Nuggets, you go play the Denver Broncos, it's different because you're having to play in a different altitude. There's been a lot of studies about referee bias. So one famous study that's been repeated quite often is they'll take a series of controversial plays. So in football, there'll be like pass interference calls, or in basketball, it'll be, is it a charge, is it a block? And they'll show these plays to referees with no sound. And the referees will make their call on a piece of paper. And then they'll show these identical plays to referees with the sound, and the referees will make their call on the piece of paper. And what they have found is that when the referees can hear the sound of the crowd cheering one way or the other, the referees in those cases will rule in favor of the home team 15% more of the time than when they saw those same plays with no sound. So there is such a thing as referee bias, and there is such a thing as home court advantage. Now here's the point for you and me. Home court advantage, it doesn't just work in the world of sports. It also works in the world of home, meaning your home life. Now, let me explain for just a minute. One thing that we as Christians often forget is that every single day you and I are engaged in a battle. We forget that. Here's what 1 Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 8. He says, "Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." So Peter's wanting his first century audience to understand and to remember the stakes. Life is not just about let's go make some money to have some nice things to have a good life. Like, there's a lot on the line every single day. Satan is alive and active. Scripture says he has schemes, like he knows what he's doing. And what he wants to do is he wants to pull you as far away from Christ as possible. He's pretty good at his job. And so what this means for you and me is that every day we wake up, we're in a battle. We're in a battle, this cosmic battle between good and evil. Paul puts it this way in this famous passage in Romans chapter 7 when he says, "I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil, it's right there. It's right there with me. I find this true of my own life. Even though I'm a preacher, I've got the Dr. Heckle, Mr. Hyde. It's going on deep. Jekyll and Hyde, Heckle and Jide. I think I messed that up, didn't I? It's actually not in the notes. Probably should stick to the notes, shouldn't I? I've got it deep within me. In fact, I felt it last night. We're driving home from Kansas. I'm pretty tired. We've been in the car 2.5 hours. We're getting home a little later than normal, so we pick up Chick-fil-A. And the reason we go to Chick-fil-A is because it's really fast. I love their drive-thru. We get through the drive-thru line and they hand us half of our order. And they say, "I want you to pull up and turn your flashers on and we'll be out shortly with the rest of your order." I was thinking, what? You're Chick-fil-A. This is ridiculous. So I pull up and we turn the flashers on and I'm just staring at the clock, just counting the minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Other people are getting their food. We get up to like 7 or 8 minutes and I can feel my mood. Like, it's tanking. I'm not a pleasant person. I'm just fidgety. I'm starting to complain heavily about Chick-fil-A. So finally, Heidi from the back seat, she can tell I'm getting pretty impatient. And she says, "Dad, how about I ask you some questions to calm you down?" So I felt it, like I was not a pleasant person last night. And that's kind of a silly example, but you feel it too. We're like Paul. We're in a battle. We've got the battle between good and evil warring. It's a war of the heart. In fact, the war can go back, it can be traced back to the beginning of time. Have you ever thought about this? Genesis 1, Scripture says, God said. Genesis 3, the serpent says, did God really say? That's the battle every day you face, because on the one hand, you know God tells you certain things, and you know promises of God are certain and you believe in them, but you've also got this other part of you that's like, really? You sure the Bible says that? Are you sure those church people says that? Are you sure God said that? And so we all have this war inside our hearts. And so what do we do about it? Well, I've mentioned this several times in this series, but here's really the big case of the series. If you're average, you spend 100 hours a week at home. 100 hours out of the 168. And so what this means is, as a Christian, and here's the big idea of the message today, you and I must learn to take advantage of home court advantage. We got 100 hours a week. And here's what I've learned. I've learned that the minute I step out of my house and the minute I drive away into the rest of the world, I lose control. I have no control over what happens in the political arena. I can't control the war on terrorism. I can't control what's happening at the borders. I can't control the national debt. I cannot control any policy that is being discussed by lawmakers anywhere. Can't control that. I've also learned that I have no sway over pop culture. I do not have my voice in the ear of Kanye West or Nicki Minaj or Ariana Grande or anybody else. They are not consulting me about the songs that they write. Hollywood is not calling me to ask me my advice about the movies that they make. I have no control over that world. I have no control over the billboards that I see when I drive everywhere. I was in LA a few weeks ago, and I'm telling you, every third billboard was advertising a gentleman's club. So they're promoting this lifestyle, which I disagree with, but I can't control it. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like old school David and Goliath, get my sling out? Like, I can't control what's going on those billboards. But what I have learned is that when I get home, I have a lot of control over what happens in my house. I have a lot of control over the kinds of things that we talk about. I have control over the rhythm of my own life. When I wake up, when I go to bed, what I'm doing while I'm at home. I have control over what I listen to. I have control over what I watch. And so I have to learn, and you have to learn to take advantage of home court advantage. Now, you might say, well, okay, what are you really talking about, Phil? Let me give you a few examples from Scripture about people in the Bible that took advantage of home court advantage. First of all, Deuteronomy 6. God has just given Israel the 10 Commandments through Moses. And then Moses gives the people these instructions. He says, verse 7, impress them, the 10 Commandments, on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Like, what's he talking about here? Where you lie down, where you get up. He's talking about your home life. He's saying when you get out in the world, you can't really control what happens, but at your home you can. And so you got to take advantage of home court advantage. Here's another example. Take a guy like Daniel. He's a single guy. Doesn't have any kids, not married. He can't control what's happening in the empire. He can't really control what the laws that Darius is writing. He can't control what Darius is doing in general. But what does Scripture say? Daniel 6. He went home to his upstairs room where the windows open towards Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and he prayed, giving thanks to God. So what's he doing? He's leveraging the power of his home. He has no sway over anything that happens in the world, but he can get on his knees in his room and pray towards God. You see, what we do at home is we build these layers of protection from the Lord so that when we go out into the world and we are bombarded by the arrows of the enemy, we're strong. But for those people that do not take advantage of home court advantage, then the sad reality is Satan himself even gets into the home. Take advantage of home court advantage. Here's one more from the Old Testament. King David, Psalm 101. I will conduct the affairs of my house with a blameless heart. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. This is the king here. He can do anything he wants. And we know from other stories in the Bible, he does do anything he wants. With the Bathsheba story. But at least in this psalm, this is the ideal. This is what King David wants. He's saying, I can't control what's going on out there, but in my house, I'm not going to set my eyes before anything that is vile. Like the home is the headquarters of spiritual formation, and you have more control over your home life than you do of anything else. So take advantage of home court advantage. And so what does this look like in real practical people terms? What I want to do for a few minutes is I want you to hear from 2 of our families who are not perfect, but they are doing a pretty good job about taking advantage of home court advantage. So the first family I want you to meet and I want to visit with is the Hustligs. I'll invite you guys to come up to the stage. While they're walking up to the stage, we'll do some introductions. Everybody say, hi, David. And say, hi, Landon. And hi, Logan. All right, so here's what these guys are good at. They have navigated the faith sports tension pretty well. Not perfectly, pretty well. The fastest growing religion in the United States of America is a religion called youth sports. There's about 40 million participants in it. Practices usually run from every day of the week. It's a $10 billion industry. And if you've got kids or if you've got grandkids, you are caught up, probably to a degree, in this world. And one thing the Hustlicks have done pretty well is navigate when faith and sports don't necessarily see eye to eye. And one of the reasons I wanted you to hear from them is because they've had success in both worlds. So actually, let's start there. Landon, Logan, I know you guys don't like to brag about yourself, but tell the church the accomplishments of your brother.
I'll go first. We can save the best for last. So Logan's senior year of high school football, he was number 2 receiver ranked in the state. He had over 1,000 yards of receiving, 14 touchdowns. He was all Big City first team, all state honorable mention, all while only playing 8 games due to injuries. He's a many-time state qualifier in track, multiple time state medalist. He just finished his freshman year at the University of Oklahoma Baptist, and there he won a conference title in the 800 indoors, and this next year he'll be competing for the University of Oklahoma and for track and field.
Okay, decent. 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, all the track stuff. Okay, now tell us about Landon.
Okay, well, mine are quite a bit better, but I'll read yours off as well. He was the 2018 D2 national champion in the 400 hurdles, 5-time All-American, multiple-time state champion in high school, and he holds 4 school records at Oklahoma Christian.
Okay, so you guys have done pretty well athletically. Now, one thing, so David told me this several years ago, and it's really stuck with me. You and Susan, your lovely wife, you decided on a value for your family quite a few years ago. Tell us about that decision.
Yeah, and you're right, Phil, that sports has become a religion, specifically in America. And Sunday has just become just another day of the week. But yeah, Susan and I decided early on, and I think that was a key to it, is that we planned it out and decided early how we would approach this whole sports challenge when the culture of sports conflicts with our church time. And so I think it became less of a rule and more of a standard and an expectation that how we would apply that with our kids. And then we found that a key to it is not asking so much that, do we allow our kid to miss church for a sporting activity, more that were we willing to let that sporting activity affect our children's lives and their faith.
So mom and dad decide, generally speaking, we're going to do church over sports. How'd you guys feel about that as you were growing up?
It was tough sometimes. One of the biggest instances that stands out to me was back in 5th grade. I was playing flag football, and we were in the playoffs, and just so happened that the first playoff game coincided with a Wednesday night. And I'd known about it for a couple weeks and knew it could be a potential problem. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to go be with my team, be with my teammates, and we're going to go play and hopefully win the playoff game. Instead, that Wednesday afternoon after school, both my mom and my dad came and sat me down and told me in no uncertain terms that I would not be going to the playoff game, I would be going to church.
This was the playoff game.
I know. It was pretty rough in our household.
Not practice. Okay, keep going, sorry.
I got it. And so that car ride, it was a little rough going to church, and that night I was pretty irritated because we ended up losing the game because I didn't play. But it was tough to navigate that situation and others.
What about you? You guys ever experienced negative consequences from this?
Yeah, it was tough to meet my friends the next day and meet my teammates, and the next couple of weeks it definitely strained a relationship because they didn't understand why I had chosen church over sports.
They probably blamed you for the loss. Yeah. Those 5th grade punks.
It's rough out there sometimes.
Yeah, my Little League team, we would practice Sunday night after evening worship, and I'd be about an hour late, and my coach would make me run sprints while everyone else was on the water break because I was late, so he wanted me to catch up on conditioning, stuff like that. Happened a lot.
You actually had to, run by yourself because you went to church.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Jesus says, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Way to go, man. You did it. It's good. You get stars in your crown. So now, obviously, the value of faith has not stopped you guys from succeeding athletically, which that's the fear of a lot of parents is, oh no, if I put my kids in church, they won't make it. But you guys did great athletically. How did you guys succeed athletically, even though you still, for the most part, tried to put faith first?
Yeah, I think it mainly comes down to discipline. Have the discipline to not only go do the extra work, but in the practice we were at, just show up and give that extra effort to where the coach noticed, to push myself or ourselves as hard as much as we could. And that discipline also would then translate over to spiritually, making sure you're at church every time it's offered and being involved.
So discipline really translates between I can be disciplined at the sport, running, football. I can also be disciplined in my faith. So that goes both ways there. So tell me this. You guys are now, adults in college. You're looking back on childhood. I'm sure in the moment of childhood, it's like, I can't believe you, Mom and Dad. Why can't I run? Why can't I play? But now that you look back on it, tell me some things from your perspective. How did this particular principle shape you?
I think it helped us get our priorities straight. Which was God above everything else. And looking back at his fifth grade flag football game, that really doesn't matter past that one night, maybe that week. But this value that my parents have put in us at an early age, that's going to matter for eternity.
That's good. So back to you, David. I'm assuming there were certain points where it was hard to stick to your guns. Like you decided this, but they were pushing back, and they're growing up. How did you and Susan really stick to your guns on this one?
Yeah, no one intentionally starts off by thinking, I'm going to skip church for an activity. It just kind of evolves that way through kind of peer pressure, and that maybe it's that first email or text message you get that, hey, because of the rains, we're rescheduling the practice or the game. And it gets to where you kind of have an internal fight of, am I willing to do this, or do I want to deal with the disappointment of my son or daughter? And it is a little bit of an internal challenge with it. But ultimately, because we had planned ahead and set our schedule and had our standards ahead, it became easy, certainly after the first time. And what we did, the first practice or game that conflicted with church service, we just had a face-to-face conversation with the coach and just shared with them our perspective and why we were missing that practice or game.
So you got it in early. That way it wasn't an issue.
Yes.
So what would you say, the average parent out there probably doesn't have children that are of Olympic caliber. So... he's going to try to qualify for the Olympics next year. Was I supposed to say that? Can I say that?
Yeah.
I just said that. I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to say that. So, but the average parent that's not the case. So what advice would you have for the average mom and dad where the reality of my kid really might get benched if we stand up for faith first? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I think, everyone faces that same pressure. No one wants to see your kid disappointed or ostracized or just not being part of the team or not getting to play because of practice. He said, if you weren't at this practice, you're not going to play at that game. Man, that's hard because you want your child to fit in with the rest of the team. But the flip side, too, is that we really don't want our kids growing up that they're perceived that they are the center of the world, the center of the universe, and that it all revolves around them. We're not parents that are just the road crew. We're not the taxi service for them. And that we live in a very, very overscheduled world. So we're going to have to fight and be really purposeful with how we make our decision on this particular issue and to keep our faith at the forefront of our lives and ultimately so that we can have home court advantage.
That's really well said. I like that phrase. Yeah, that's good. Hey, let's give the Hustligs a round of applause. So while they're making their way down, I want to invite a second family up, the Chanceys. I'm going to invite Dudley and Matt and Drew up to the stage. So we'll do intros here. Everybody say hi, Dudley. And hi, Drew. And hi, Matt. So, about 10 years ago, I'm sitting in a class with Dr. Chansey over on the end there, and he's really big on family devotionals. So I started applying that practice, and so really for the last, ever since my kids have been born, that's been a big value to me, and a lot of that started with Dudley and his wife Vicky have done devotionals with their boys for their whole life. And so now Drew and Matt are grown, and so I want to talk a little bit and have you guys reflect on these family devotionals. So Dudley, we'll start with you. Why did you and Vicky decide that this particular thing, daily family devotionals, would be a non-negotiable practice for your family?
Well, I was a youth minister for 25 years, and our elders decided that we were going to give this thing back to the parents, that it's their job. Deuteronomy 6, we would be facilitators, etc. And so I started writing family home devotionals for our kids in our youth group. And then we had kids, and I thought, well, shoot, we probably ought to do it too. And we started, and it's a God thing or something. I don't know.
So, I say family devotional, and people think a lot of things. And some of you might be thinking, what are you talking about? So tell us, Matt and Drew, what did you guys do each evening growing up?
Yeah, so, Drew's older than me, so I guess it probably started before I was born. I don't know, I wasn't there. But ever since I can remember, earliest memories, every night most of the time, go into Mom and Dad's room and do it there, and we'd read scripture, chapter from the Bible. So one night it might be me reading, one night Dad, Mom, Drew, everybody takes turns, read something from the Bible, and then we would all pray, and it'd go from youngest to oldest. So I'd go first, then Drew would go, Mom would go, Dad would go, every night. Whether Dad was out of town, the three of us would still do it. If Mom was out of town, the three of us would still do it every night.
So you read the Bible and you pray. Okay? Sounds pretty simple. So you guys have friends and you guys were social, and as you grew up, you did more stuff with your friends. So what would happen if you had people spend the night?
It still happened. So the parents were always great. They were like, yeah, have them over. Rarely did we hear a no to spending the night or having people over. They'd come over. Usually it was church friends from here, so that wasn't a huge deal. It was kind of like, really, do we have to do this? But they'd usually hop in on the prayers and pray too, and that was cool. But if it was a school friend or non-Christian friend, that they would still want to do it. And I remember feeling embarrassed or no, wait, but they don't go to church with us. They're all the more reason to do it. So we would still do that, and yeah.
So you guys would actually pray with your friends during sleepovers. Most 14-year-old boys, it's they watch a really dumb movie, and then they do really dumb things,
We did that after the prayer.
Okay. Okay. All right. Lord, bless this mess, kind of a thing. We're about to wreak havoc. We're sorry. Okay. So did you guys, we're talking about this almost as if it's kind of like rainbows in the sky. Did you guys enjoy this all the time?
Of course not.
Of course not. So this was not something that you relished every night. It was...
Oh, no. There were lots of nights where it's really, we got to do this.
Okay. So you didn't necessarily like it every night, but you did it anyway. So now that you're adults, kind of same question I asked Logan and Landon, looking back on it, how has this practice of family devotionals shaped you guys as adults?
Yeah. It's built, the repetition of doing it carries over in all aspects of life, and definitely makes it easier to, do the things you don't want to do and get through them. And then I know for me, and then it turns out for Drew too, and we didn't realize this till a few weeks ago, it's really built up our prayer life. And, for me, it's not just, you're praying a couple times. It's just I'm talking to God constantly throughout the day, just casual conversations. And I didn't realize till you asked us to do this and we talked about it that, I think this was from that, because Drew feels the same way.
Yeah, I made a comment about it, and he was like, Oh, you do that? Yeah, me too. It's not the whole Daniel, get on your knees and pray. Like that's great, but just kind of that ongoing kind of quiet conversation about things going on. So, and it just didn't really think about that being, it just seemed normal. So I think that's attributed to this.
So you guys are saying that your current relationship with Jesus is pretty fluid, pretty natural, and you're attributing that to this constant family devotionals growing up, even when you didn't want to do it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's not saying it's always been like that. I mean, there's hot and cold seasons, and
sure, but there's a lot of factors to one's relationship with Jesus, but it's hard to replicate what 18 years of family devotionals can do, and I think you guys are experiencing some of the fruits of that, even when you didn't see it at the time. So Dudley, back to you. As they got older, and you felt the resistance, how did you and Vicky just kind of keep pushing with it even when they didn't necessarily want to do it?
I think it goes back a little bit to doing youth ministry for all those years. I still stay in touch with kids that were in my youth group in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And what's amazing to me is the kids that are faithful, that are still involved in our fellowship and in church and all, those were the same kids that had parents that were involved in church, and they were my best volunteers. They weren't perfect either, but they were doing this church thing, and they were doing this faith thing with their kids. And so, and if you read the Bible a lot, you find it, they lose it after one generation over and over and over again because they're not telling the story, and that's our job. So my job, Vicky's job, is to tell them the story, and then now their job is to tell their kids the story, and so it's that pass it on kind of thing. That's our job.
So last question for you, Dudley. What would you say to the dad or mom in the audience that's thinking, man, that sounds great, but I'm not a professor, I have no training, how do I do this? What do you say to the person who it feels intimidating to do family devotionals at home?
Yeah, anecdotally, talking to parents around the country, they say, we don't have time or we don't know how to do it. And it's pretty easy just to open up the Psalms and read a psalm. You don't need much training for that. I said in first service, if you go home tonight and tell your teenagers you're going to start meeting every night and read the Bible and pray, they'll probably hate you.
But you should do it. Yeah, we don't hate our parents
you've
now.
Never
we may have
done
hated
it
them
before.
then.
So for those of you with the crying babies out there, you need to start now doing that, and it just becomes, that's what you do. For you that have older children, you're feeling, man, what do we do? I would say your kids are going to be like you. We know that from research. They're going to be just like you, which is scary. And assuming how you're living your life, they're going to look at your life more than they're going to look at how many times we do a devotional or something like that. And so that's important. And I also talked about we need to tell our faith story to our kids and pass that on. And so I would say, be natural, just say, you may have to apologize to your kids and say, hey guys, man, we just haven't been getting this faith thing right. We're going to start over. We may make some mistakes, but hang in there with us. Let's just do it.
Pretty cool. All right, let's give the Chanceys a round of applause. Okay, we are going to wrap up here. Can I ask you to go ahead and stand? And you are going to help me land this plane together. We're going to read the scripture together. This is Joshua chapter 24. Here we go, everybody together. Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So here's what this verse is. This is ancient trash talk. Meaning, when you're watching a game, when you're watching sports, sometimes the home team will look at the opposing team and they will say, not in my house. You can't bring this on me today because this is my arena, this is my home, and this is where I win. And that's what Joshua's saying. He's saying, guys, I can't control what happens out there. Can't control your decisions, but for me and for my house, we are going to serve the Lord. So I'm telling you, if you want a strong faith, like if you want one of those lives that other people look at you and say, man, I wish I could weather a storm like her. I wish I had the faith that he has. I wish I wish I had the faith that she has. I wish I had the compassion and the love that this person has. I'm telling you, if you want that kind of faith in your life, you got to have that kind of faith at home. You got 100 hours a week. 100 hours a week. So take advantage of home court advantage. And if you need something from this church family right now, you can come tell me about it. Let's praise the Father.